Movie buffs, welcome back to the Movie Bay. This is D. In today's video, 3's still not a charm. We're going to go back again and revisit 3 movies that's still not better. The third installment is not better than the second one in the franchise. I promise we're going to get to 3 is a charm or 3's a charm. But right now, 3's still not a charm. And starting this one off, we're going to start off with 1993's RoboCop 3. RoboCop 3 was just... it was horrible. It was a bad movie. RoboCop 2 was good. RoboCop 1, we know that was just phenomenal. RoboCop 2 was decent. RoboCop 3 was just, oh man, I don't know what they was thinking with that one. They didn't have Peter Weller returning the role. The guy they casted, he was okay, but he was no Peter Weller. The acting was off. Rip Torn was out of place in that movie. Just not a good movie at all. RoboCop 3, they should have just left that one in the trash heap. Next up, we're going to take a look at, in my opinion, out of the original 4 movies, because I'm just going to say the original 4 movies, I'm going to say Scream 3, this is the 3-pack. The third Scream movie is the weakest link in the first 4 films. Okay, 5 and the new one 6, and I think is another one. That's a new trilogy. But we're talking about Scream 3 from the original 4 movies. Wasn't good. It was the weakest link out of all of them, in my opinion. So that was 2000's Scream 3. Next up, we're going to take a look at 1996's Darkman Die, Darkman Die. Out of the Darkman trilogy, so you got Darkman, then Darkman 2, The Return of Durant, and then Die, Darkman Die. Die, Darkman Die was horrible, was absolutely horrible compared to the original Darkman, and even Darkman 2, The Return of Durant was better than that. And Return of Durant wasn't good, trust me. Next up, we got Friday the 13th Part 3. Friday the 13th Part 3 was not better than Friday the 13th Part 2. And that was 1982's Friday the 13th Part 3. Next up, we got 2008's The Transporter 3. The Transporter 3 was okay movie. It wasn't bad, but when you think about the first Transporter and the Transporter 2, this wasn't up there. But it was still a decent movie. A lot of these are decent movies. They're just not better than the second movie in the franchise. A lot of these third movies, even from the first video I did, a lot of those third movies was pretty decent watches. It just wasn't better than the second movie. That's why I called it 3's Not a Charm. There you go. Next up, we're going to take a look at 2014's The Expendables 3. Definitely not better than The Expendables 2. Definitely not. Next, we're going to take a look at 2013's Riddick. There was no way in hell this movie... Now, again, this was a decent enough watch, but The Chronicles of Riddick was the best in series. The Chronicles of Riddick was even better than Pitch Black, which was the original in that trilogy, in my opinion. Next up, we got 2014's Taken 3. The original Taken was good. 2 was okay. This one... and not so much. Next up, we got 07's Rush Hour 3. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Rush Hour franchise. I think Rush Hour is a good buddy cop franchise. It's up there with the rest of them. It's pretty good. 1 and 2 were really good. 3, not as good as 2. Next up is one where you got The Hangover, let's see, 2013's The Hangover 3. Now, I did like The Hangover 1 and 2. 3 was, again, okay, but The Hangover 2 was much better than this. Much better. And an honorable mention for this one is, and I know this one is going to be, I want to have people down in the comment section like, yo, what are you talking about? But in my opinion, I'm going to tell you why. This one is going to require a little explaining, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and put it up. Especially with the new one in theaters now killing it. Y'all going to be like, yo, what is up with that? John Wick Parabellum, John Wick 3. Now, we all can safely say the original John Wick movie was a masterpiece. And what made it a masterpiece? I'll tell you, it came out of nowhere. The original John Wick movie just came out of nowhere. It took us all by storm. Fantastic movie, great action, great acting, a very interesting, just a very interesting story. And John Wick 2 turned it up a notch by really diving deep into the Continental in the underworld, the high table. Not so much the high table. We didn't really get into that until 3, but it started diving deeper into the underworld of the world of the Continental. But 3, again, where it dove a lot deeper into the underworld, and it really started, you started hearing more about the high table. You actually saw the high table. The action in this, to me, was, and I know this is weird, it was too much. It was the ending to this. I mean, my man was shot, thrown off of a building. It was on action overload. I don't mind action. I mean, that's what we watch John Wick for. Just like we watch the Fast and the Furious movies for. We don't watch them because we expecting any kind of realism. So I understand that about John Wick. I'm not saying it's a bad movie because it's on action overload. That's what we come to expect from John Wick at this point. I didn't see the 4th one, but I heard it's a very action-packed movie. But this one, it just strayed so far away from the groundedness of the first movie. The second movie was still a little grounded, but this one, the action was just, how can I put it? It was unbelievable. That's why I say this wasn't as good as the second one. So for John Wick 3, again, it was a good movie. I'm not saying it was a bad movie, not by a long shot. But when you stack this up against 2, it to me is just not as good for me. Because I like action movies, but I like the action to be somewhat believable. And that's what takes away a little bit of this movie in comparison to the second movie, John Wick 3. Honorable mention. I mean, don't come from my head because I still think this is a good movie. But when you look at John Wick 1, 2, and then you get to this one, you're like, okay, well, this is a little over the top. So here we go. So that's 3's Not a Charm. We'll do a couple more of those. I'm promising you guys I'm working on 3's a Charm with 3, where there's a part 3 that is better than a part 2 or even a part 1. They're out there. It's not as many of those as it is with 3's Not a Charm, because like in a lot of things, in a lot of different mediums, that by the time you get to the third one, it's definitely not as good as the first one. And a lot of times it's not as good as the second. Like even in the music game, that third album, a lot of times that third album is not as good as the first one or the second one, a lot of times. So let's wrap that one up, and I'll see you in the next one.